It's time for the Newsmaker Show on News Talk AM 1480 WLEA.
Monday morning, and on with us today is former ABC News correspondent Tom Osborne, who's now with USUN Report. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Brian, it's a pleasure, as always.
Well, in segment one, we're going to talk about the Russian plane crash in Egypt. In segment two, we'll talk about Republican politics at the national level. Now, Tom is a regular guest on this show. He used to work for ABC TV News and now does a commentary on United Nations news from the U.S.'s perspective. It's called USUN Report. Tom Osborne, that Russian plane that went down in Egypt on Saturday, ISIS took credit for that.
It's a terrible tragedy, of course, and it happens in the midst of the political ins and outs that are going on in Syria, and the whole region, of course, is involved in that. It is interesting, and it will be interesting to see how Putin responds as he has tried to make political friends with the both sides and tried to be a player in whatever may come of as they sit at the table for peace talks. But this plane crash obviously is going to give him a chance to spread some sympathy, goodwill, and to earn some assistance from all international parties. Who knows? It might bring us a little closer to that peace table that they're all working for.
Do you think ISIS will keep this up, consider it a success and keep it up, or do you think that ISIS will be stopped by Putin and possibly others with Putin?
I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that question, and I think that's the most frightening thing about this, that ISIS has claimed and claims to have the capacity to do this. No one doubted that, I guess, since we've been hearing that they have obviously demonstrated great ability in the technological areas. It's a very frightening development, and it requires all the more that the international community work together through the various organizations like the United Nations, all these organizations that we have, and in any way possible to be able to track down who ISIS is. They are so far just a blind alley, which we're all fearing, and nobody seems to have a plan as to exactly how to go about punishing them, arresting them, stopping them, persuading them to stop this the horrible acts that they are committing against civilization.
ISIS also released a video recently of them cutting off the heads of 4 Kurdish fighters who were sympathetic to the U.S., put it in an online video. Tom Osborne, you covered the Middle East in 1991 for ABC. Your thought on the online video beheadings, and again, will any government put a stop to this?
Well, of course, they're going to have to, I guess, and as I said, there's going to have to be a great effort to join forces, technology, to track this down. But even if you do, it's obvious that this ISIS and ISIL has a reach that goes beyond borders. And this is something we've never really encountered before, except perhaps if Germany had been successful in winning the war in World War II, we would all have been faced with a different way to live. ISIS is actually being successful in influencing the way we live. It's changing our lives. I don't think there is an answer at the moment. Of course, it brings all the more focus of the international world to find an answer and to bond together to find a successful conclusion. But where is that? Who knows?
Jerusalem Post reported that the leader of Iran said on Sunday, and this is Ayatollah Khamenei, that the U.S. is the cause of problems in the Middle East, not the solution. Wondering, was that bad timing on the Ayatollah's part, considering President Obama's recent Iranian deal, which seemed pretty sympathetic to Iran?
Well, of course, the Iran government is speaking to in 2 different directions. One is the international accord and the group of people that they worked so hard to with to put that together, the nuclear deal, and they're talking to another audience of hardliners that are at home. So I would put that in the hardliners camp, that comment. And it is interesting, though, that Iran is showing signs that they are ready and willing to play a part in peace talks or the development of peace talks in Syria. They themselves, despite their rhetoric, have decided to for the first time, be a part of this solution and not to be the problem itself. I think the talks have actually influenced the relationship of all the great powers, the U.S. in particular, with Iran, and the future possibilities of them working together with us in that region, I think could be quite successful if it happens.
President Obama, he's called weak by some on the right for not sending troops over when there are acts of terrorism by ISIS. Wondering, how will this legacy work out policy work out for the next Democrat candidate for president? You know, this is a country where some people, they automatically want justice. They want to go over there. And then others say, let's not send our 18-year-old sons and daughters off to war again. So this Obama policy of not going off into the Middle East as often as other administrations, will that work out in a good or bad way for the Democrats in the presidential campaign in 2016?
I think most of the American people in the polls show it, that certainly we're all against terrorism, but we're not in favor of sending, as I said, several 100,000 troops over to any country to do it. And I think we have to be very wise with our power as we express it, and I think the president is following that course. It seems to me that ISIS can appear on our doorstep if they want to. But I think that they know that they're going to pay a price. And we have consistently, I should say, the president has consistently, with new technology, and there's a lot of debate about how that plays out, but with technology, the drone technology has taken out the heads of these leaders, literally in the region, in many cases. I'm not sure that's going to work for the long term. Obviously, it's still expressing American power. But how we solve this depends on, I think, how we get into the ranks of ISIS and figure out really what's going on inside. What is the illness? What is the sickness? How can we treat it? How can we get our young sons and daughters probably back from the ISIS cult that seems to be sweeping across the world?
Wondering, Tom Osborne, Donald Trump said recently that President Obama does not know what he's doing in the Middle East. The question for you, Tom Osborne, does Obama know what he's doing? Is he intentionally holding back and trying to avoid getting into the Middle East?
I think that if there's anyone who says that they know what the solution of the problems in the Middle East would be, is really not really telling the truth. I don't think anyone really knows what the solution in the Mideast is. It's many, many steps in many different directions, and we know what some of those are. As we can see, our Secretary of State goes from one group talk on peace settlements in very violent areas to another table. After he leaves the last one, it's another one. And I think we're in that kind of world. It can't be the United States offering the solutions for all of our problems, but we need to be plugged in because we do have the power to influence and we do have the resources if the rest of the world wants to work with us. But we can't be the United States against everything that we think is evil and without any assistance.
Talking with Tom Osborne of USUN Report on the Newsmaker Show here on Monday morning. When we get back, we'll talk about the Republicans and their campaign for president. Stay with us. It's Brian O'Neill talking with Tom Osborne on the national GOP scene. Tom Osborne, did you have any thoughts on the CNBC debate from last week? By all accounts, the CNBC moderators were not too good.
That's interesting. The moderators drew such criticism. I think, my personal opinion, I do think they were thrown off. It was a very difficult debate. I'm not sure if anyone could have, and probably Walter Cronkite could have pulled it off. But I think it was a very difficult situation, and plus the idea of having three different anchors and they have their plan, and suddenly those on the platform decide to ignore them completely. It's a bit anarchic, a little anarchic that breaks out there. So I don't think it was easy for them. I think the debate generally was much more somber, more mature, a little bit more responsible than I've seen in the past. It seems even Trump reflected that, as he tried to be more of a government, not a government person, but let's say more of a statesman and less of of a politician. He says, "I'm not a politician." Well, he's a very good politician. So I think we heard less from him, and I think it was a very interesting discussion of policy without a lot of the political vibrato.
Senator Ted Cruz was on Fox News recently, and he said if all these moderators, no matter what the network, are going to be left-leaning and asking left-leaning questions and big left-leaning media names, it would only be fair to have one of the Republican debates or Democrat debates be moderated by Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Mark Levin. That got a lot of attention when Cruz said that. Do you see such a thing ever happening, Tom Osborne?
I do. I think it's a great idea, and it certainly would. It would be interesting to see how they criticize and question, let's say, that their particular political leaning, the leaders of that leaning. It would be a fascinating combination. I'd love to see it, and I think it's probably a possibility. I don't know how it is organizationally, but we'll see, and I would look forward to it.
On the national GOP scene, wanted to start out here with a audio sound bite from one of our late night shows here on WLEA. This is from the Jim Bohannon show. He's talking to a Veronique DeRougy. She's a George Mason University research fellow, talking about what Paul Ryan will be like as Speaker of the House. Bohannon asked her, what will the difference be between Paul Ryan and former House Speaker John Boehner? Here's what Veronique DeRougy said.
He is also very different than Speaker Boehner in that he is a real wonk. I mean, this is fundamentally a policy guy, and so I think he's shown it in a lot of instances, and I've got to imagine that it's going to influence the way he is as a speaker. This is, after all, why he was dragging his feet to become a speaker, is because he really wanted to be the Ways and Means chairman, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee.
So, Tom Osborne, when Veronique DeRougy says that Paul Ryan is a policy wonk, what she means is he's a down to the details guy and not into the conservative ideas or philosophy as much. What she said on the Jim Bohannon show, that's kind of going up, and she likes that kind of idea of somebody being a policy wonk as opposed to a Tea Partier. It seems to be in sharp contrast with what conservative hosts say about Washington Republicans needing to please the Tea Party voters. The conservatives have said for a long time that there's a pattern of Republicans campaigning to the right but governing to the center or left. Tom Osborne, another guest on our late night, early morning talk shows, and this is from the John Batchelor show, which is overnights on WLEA. John Batchelor was talking with Liz Peek from the Fiscal Times, and Liz Peek says pretty much the same thing that Veronique DeRougy said on Jim Bohannon about Paul Ryan.
With Paul Ryan in charge, and with these two things, these monumental things behind us, which was raising the debt ceiling for the next 2 years, and also passing a budget, which raises spending by less than 1%. And yes, it has been railed at by the far right, but the truth is this is a pretty reasonable accommodation, and to me it just takes off the table the most disruptive kinds of protests, if you will, that the Freedom Caucus could engage in over the next year or so.
So there you have, I guess what you'd say is the establishment Republican view from guests on the Jim Bohannon show and the John Batchelor show. Now, Rush Limbaugh tells it a different way. This is Rush Limbaugh on our station taking a call.
Here's John in Dayton, Ohio. John, I'm glad you waited. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Thank you, Rush. It's a real honor. I want to talk about something other than the circus in Washington for just a moment and address Paul Ryan's opposition to the Jefferson Rule.
I hate to tell you that's a circus too, and but go ahead.
Okay. And I know the media, the mainstream media and Fox basically wants to talk about, how great he is because he wants to be at home with his family and spend more family time. And I could do a sidebar on that from what you mentioned earlier. But my main reason for the call is that his opposition to the Jefferson Rule basically allows him as Speaker to impose unity on a disordered and divided House. The only people that are causing disorder or dividing the House in the eyes of the establishment are the people that are newly elected in the Tea Party base and the GOP base that put these guys in office to do a job that the establishment is not doing.
That pretty much sums up the Tea Party view. Here's what Rush Limbaugh said right after that about
the leadership's ties to the donor class. And as you and I well know, the donor class runs the Republican Party today, not the voters. Money is important, both to get you elected. It's really important after you leave office, when you can have the skids greased for a high-paying job, as a lobbyist or a consultant to a corporation or whatever. But money, everybody wants more. I don't care how much you have. And the lure of more money is seductive. It just is. And it's always been a factor in politics, and it's always been a major factor. It's just now taken on a dimension that I think has always been there, but it's surfaced now. This cronyism, call it corporate cronyism, socialist cronyism, capital cronyism, whatever, it's visible now. They're not even trying to hide it. It's always existed, but it's worse now than ever.
Now, question for you, Tom Osborne. You worked for ABC TV News. During that period, you interviewed Rush Limbaugh. You spent a day with Rush during that interview. That gets you closer to him than most of us have ever been. Rush Limbaugh critics say he's a GOP mouthpiece. People who say that don't know what they're talking about. You hear him, he's ripped on Paul Ryan, Boehner, Romney, McCain, Jeb Bush. The list goes on, and those are establishment guys.
By the way, Rush is a good guy. I did spend the day with him, and I thought he was really a nice guy.
Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh. We disagree on a lot of things, but I think he really is a brilliant man who's raised talk radio to a level where we need to deal with issues of the day, whether we like his turn of phrase or not. I think he's a kind of a catalyst. He's the kind of person that you would want at a party, maybe for a while, to get things moving.
Here in Steuben County, we have an election tomorrow. We have a lot of local elections. And guessing that those that are voting Republican, a lot of them will be Tea Party voters. Some are not. Some of them are party voters. It depends on the person. And the progressive Democrats, they argue that there really is no Tea Party, that the Tea Party is just a creation of the big Republican donors, and the whole thing is a big fake fight between the establishment and the Tea Party. The moderate Republicans argue that the Tea Party is inaccurate on policy and procedure, and that people like Ted Cruz give great speeches but don't get anything done at the end of the day. Then you have the Tea Party saying that they vote for these candidates and always end up getting sold out. Question for you, Tom Osborne. Who will win in the end, do you think? The Tea Party, will they be able to see the real change that they want, or do you think the establishment will be victorious in this situation?
As far as it being something that doesn't exist, the fantasy, I can't buy that. They've been pretty good at organizing in these elections to defeat very substantial candidates. So it's not just some sort of passing phase or fantasy.
Tom Osborne, the former ABC TV News correspondent, now with a U.S.-UN report. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Brian. Anytime.
AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.